Hello, my 50 plus community. Today's video is about the hidden costs of selling the family home. Most likely your kids have moved on, and if they haven't, they're getting ready to in the near future. This means you have more time, and most likely you have more options when it comes to just life in general, and of course, your living situation. And what a lot of people start to think about as their kids move out of the house and they start approaching retirement age is, you know what, do we still need the family home? Maybe we ought to think about selling it. Maybe we think about relocating and downsizing, or maybe we just stay in the same area and downsize. So if that's you, then this is the perfect video. We're gonna go through all of the costs involved in selling the home. The one thing that I've learned in my 35 years of being in the real estate business is there are no good surprises. There just simply aren't. So it's always best before you take on any big project or any change of life thing like selling a home and moving, that you go into it with eyes wide open. Now, before we get into the cost of selling your home, there's one thing that can drastically affect the cost when it comes to selling your home, and that is your strategy. And what I mean by that is, do you plan to make repairs, spruce up, and stage your house, or are you looking to sell your home in more or less as-is condition? This decision alone can affect costs greatly. At the same time, you need to understand while doing less and selling more as-is can affect the upfront costs when selling the home. Ultimately, too, it's going to also affect the sales price that you sell at. Most likely, that's going to be quite a bit lower, and your net return also would be lower. However, that's not what today's video is about. The reason I even bring it up is because I see a lot of videos out there, and of course, TV shows with other real estate agents and so-called experts that always talk about the things you have to do to sell your home, and I'm here today to tell you there are no have-tos. So, all that being said, let's just say that you take the path of sprucing up and staging. Let's go through some of the costs that you may expect along the way. Some of the common repairs that I see when getting a home ready for the market are things like HVAC and roofing repairs. Now, once again, I've done other videos where we've talked about, I try to avoid at all costs having to replace a roof, having to replace HVAC before you sell. More often than not, we can get away with some repairs, maybe some certifications, and some invoices showing that these things have been inspected and are okay. Other things that I see all the time are typically some minor plumbing, minor electrical repairs. Sometimes they can be larger, but more often than not, I'm seeing smaller items. Things like exterior wood rot. These are things that I see creep up all the time. A lot of time, this is simply from deferred maintenance. Next, we're going to get into what I like to call spruce up. And what spruce up is, there's going to be things like painting the home, maybe making flooring upgrades. Maybe that's replacing carpet. Maybe that's removing carpet and putting down wood floors or LVP. Maybe that involves refinishing hardwood floors and things like that. Also, when it comes to spruce up, I like to think about lighting. Maybe it's updating and upgrading lighting fixtures both inside and outside the home, and things like potentially replacing old door hardware or maybe faucets and things like that. The third part of preparing the home, and really is kind of the cherry on top, is staging. There's no question that professionally staging your house can definitely make it stand out in a competitive market. And even in a market where it's not so competitive, like we've seen a lot over the last few years, the idea is to get buyers emotionally involved, pull on their heartstrings so that they want to come see the home, and then of course throw boatloads of cash at you. Now, when it comes to staging, oftentimes this may mean engaging a professional stager to walk through your home and to give you a plan for the things to do and not to do to set it up to not only impress people online, but also impress them in person when they come by and see your home. I will tell you, with most of the homes that I put on the market, we're not doing staging like most people are thinking. I think when most people see staging, they're thinking of the HGTV shows where, you know, it's bringing in all the rental furniture and dolling it up. In most cases, we're dealing with more practical things. In most cases, on my properties, we're just looking at potentially, you know, removing some items to that it's not so cluttered, potentially redistributing furniture around, maybe taking some things out, maybe adding a few things in. And sometimes it's just as simple as even just getting new linens and towels, and also the throw rugs in the bathrooms, so you're not seeing something that's all ratty that's been there 10 or 12 years. New comforters, new pillows, things like that. And you know, the good news is with the things that I've just mentioned, you can take them with you once you sell the home and you move to your next place. So what do all these upfront costs come to? Well, once again, I will kind of tell you my experience when it comes to the repairs, the spruce up, and the staging. I see usually on average the homeowner's investing about 1 to 5% of the list price towards doing these things. Sometimes, look, I walk into homes and they're just ready to go with very little of anything. That's pretty rare, but I do see that from time to time. But a lot of it is about the condition of the property. Oftentimes, it's a little bit about the price point of the property, where, the lower price points, we may do a little bit less. The higher price points, we might want to crank it up a little bit. I would tell you that my average client is investing about 3% of the list price into repairs, spruce up, and staging. So what this means in actual dollars is, if we were to take, let's say, an example of a $500,000 home, on average, I would say most of my clients are investing about $15,000 in upfront to get it ready to, once again, be not only photo and video ready, but also ready when buyers come to the home and view the property in person. So obviously, once again, some can be quite a bit less. Some can be quite a bit more. It really depends upon the home. It depends upon the situation. But what I'm seeing also is that with that 3% investment, that $15,000, in most cases, we are 3 and 4 timesing the return that we're getting on the back end. And as I like to say too, if you could pretty much be guaranteed in the stock market that, if you were to put $15,000 in, and then in 60 to 90 days, you'd get $40, $50, maybe $60,000 back, we would do that investment every day. The next big expense that we've got to talk about is real estate commissions. Now, I did a video back in April. You can check it out right there. It was about the NAR settlement and some of the rule changes that were forthcoming. Well, guess what? Now we are in October as the time of shooting this video. As of August 17th, all of the changes that were going to come from that settlement have occurred. And so we do want to talk about some of the changes and what that means to you as a home seller, because you definitely have more options and choices and more freedom when it comes to real estate commissions. So let's talk about that and break that down. First, let's start with, I gotta say it, real estate commissions are negotiable. Second, let's also establish that there's 2 sides of the commissions that you need to be aware of. First, there is the listing broker side. Now, the listing broker is the company that you would hire to represent you with selling the home. And typically what we're seeing nationwide is those listing brokerages or commissions range anywhere in the neighborhood of about 2.5% to 3%. Now, there are some discount companies out there that you can find that probably will do it a little bit less, but in general, you should expect about 2.5% to 3% of the sales price to pay for the listing broker side. In most cases, this will cover all of the professional photography, the videography, the marketing, the signage, and things like that. So everything should be covered within that 2.5% to 3% in most cases. Now, additionally, outside of the listing broker's compensation or commission, there's the other side, is the buyer broker's commission, and this is where the big changes have occurred. Prior to August 17th of 2024, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that you, the seller, would be paying that buyer broker compensation. And once again, nationally, this can change because real estate commissions and brokerages are negotiable. But in most cases, you were seeing 2.5% to 3% of the sales price offered from the seller to the buyer's broker for compensation. Now, with the rule changes, once again, there's no longer the obligation that a seller must pay a buyer broker compensation. However, there's nothing saying that you can't do it. And what I'm seeing, at least early on, we're about 2 months after these rule changes have occurred, is most home sellers are still offering compensation in the range of about 2.5% to 3%. I have seen some out there that are offering 0 and are saying things more like, bring me an offer, and if you want compensation, write it into the contract, I'll consider it. But in most cases, what I still am seeing as of October 2024 is most sellers still offering buyer broker compensation. But it's important to realize that that no longer is required and there's no obligation to doing so. Now, with all that being said, I think you can see that there can be a huge swing on the amount of commissions paid. We might be looking as low as potentially 2.5% to upwards as high as maybe 6%. I'm not here today to say what you should do, what you should not do. I will be doing a future video and giving you guys some tips on things like that. But ultimately, once again, if we look at the same example of selling a $500,000 home and you're looking at a commission amount of 2.5%, we're looking at total commission of maybe $12,500. Whereas if you ultimately pay up as much as 6%, you're looking at $30,000. So you've got a swing there of, $17,500, which is a significant amount of money. But once again, this is a topic of conversation that you should really have with your realtor when that time comes. And while we're on the topic of talking a little bit about commissions and your options out there, One thing I wanted to let you know is that in the 30 plus years I've been in this business, I've come across a lot of lousy agents out there, flat out horrible. And I've also come across many good ones. Through the years, what I've done is I've developed a huge, vast network of some of the top real estate agents throughout the country. So the chances are, if you're watching this video, you've put some thought into potentially selling the family home. Once again, maybe it's downsizing and staying local, maybe it's relocating. Either way, if you'd be interested in talking with one of the top agents in your area, just ask questions about, maybe your home's value, the do's, the don'ts. You can discuss commissions, things like that. If you'd be interested in a referral to one of those agents in your area, then I'd love the opportunity to help you out. I know I can help find a great agent who can answer all your questions and hopefully get you moving in the right direction. So this is what you need to do. You're going to want to click on the referral link in the description below, or you can simply scan the QR code that's on the screen right now. It'll take you to the form, fill it out, easy. And you know what? Once I get it, I will give you a call. I'm not going to stalk you. We're talking a 3 or 4 minute call, get to know each other a little bit so that I can kind of get an idea of what you're looking for and help make a great connection to a top agent in your area. Now, we can't talk about hidden costs without talking about closing costs. Now, some of the closing fees will include things like title insurance, attorney fees, recordation fees, notary fees, transfer taxes, wiring fees, etc., etc., etc. In Maryland, the state that I live in, it's also customary that buyers and sellers share the costs of all transfer taxes and recordation fees when it comes to selling a home. And this can be quite costly. Once again, in Maryland and the county that I live in Montgomery County, what I see is that the total cost for all transfer taxes and recordation charges run at about 2.5% of the sales price. Now, that can vary a little bit. The percentages go up with larger homes. But once again, just if we use that 2.5% number, divide that sucker in half, we're looking at about 1.25% for buyer, 1.25% for seller. And that's quite different than in many states. Like I know also, we call our area here the DMV. That stands for the district, meaning DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So that's kind of the DMV area. DC and also in Virginia, it's customary that the buyer covers all those transfer taxes, recording charges. But in Maryland, it's shared equally between buyer and seller. So, that's one of those things that you're going to want to check with your agent in your jurisdiction just to see how that's broken up. But going back to the example of a $500,000 home, at least in our jurisdiction here, if you were a seller, you should expect to pay about 1.25% of the sales price towards these transfer taxes and recordation charges. So once again, you're looking at about $6,250. But as I said, check with a realtor in your area to see how that works out, see what the percentages are, because that's going to vary from state to state and from town to town, county to county. Next, let's talk about moving costs, because getting there is just about half the fun. Moving expenses, just like everything else, have gone up over the last few years. When we were in our 20s and maybe even early 30s on our first move, the chances are your movers were your friends and family, and the only thing you offered them and paid was for a few pizzas and maybe a case of beer. Well, obviously now that we are 50 plus, that's not happening anymore. We're actually going to have to pay for this. And when budgeting out expenses, you need to be thinking about things like boxes and tape and all these type of things. Most likely, once again, if you have a home that is 3,000 square feet or greater, then the cost of just these materials alone could be $500 to $1,000. Now, when you hire a mover, once again, these costs are going to vary greatly. The first factor, of course, is going to be how much crap do you have? The more crap you have, of course, the more cost there's going to be. Also, some of the other things you're going to look into is where you're moving to. So obviously a move across country is going to be a lot more than a move across town. Other factors that are either going to keep costs down or will raise costs substantially are going to be, are you going to pack the stuff yourself? Are you going to buy those boxes that we talked about earlier and the packing tape and the bubble wrap and things like that and do it yourself? Or are you going to have the moving company do all that for you? There's no question there's going to be a huge difference in cost depending upon how much you put into it up front in getting the property ready so that all they have to do is move things out, put them on the trailer, take them to the next place, or if they've got to have to do everything. No rights, no wrongs, no judgment, maybe a little bit. But once again, this is completely personal. It's up to you as to which way you want to go on that. But it's not a bad idea to start getting some of these costs early and up front so that you have at least an idea of what the costs are going to be. And the last cost that we're going to talk about today is going to be storage costs. Now, once again, some people don't need to store anything and other people need to store a lot. So this is going to vary from household to household. Most of the homes that I'm selling out there these days, most of my clients have too much stuff in their home, and we need to make some crucial decisions up front as to whether or not they completely get rid of them and donate them, pitch them, or sell them on Facebook Marketplace, or are they going to store them? Once again, no rights, no wrongs. It's all personal to you, but those are some of the things that you need to be thinking about. What I find is storage costs can go anywhere from about maybe $150 a month for maybe a small storage area to potentially $300, $400, $500 to a size of maybe, let's say, a one-car garage. So in the event you're maybe looking to downsize, you need to take into consideration how much space I'm going to need. Do I need just one small storage area? Do I need one large storage area? Or maybe do I need 2 or 3 large storage areas? Obviously, that's going to change the cost greatly, and along with how long do I need this for? So as you prepare to sell the family home, as you can see, there's a lot of hidden costs that are lurking in the shadows there. And as I like to say, it's always best to go into anything, especially something major like this, with eyes wide open. And as I said earlier, the one thing that I know about real estate is there are no good surprises. If you have any additional questions about, the hidden costs of selling your home or anything on the topic of real estate, and you'd like to talk to me one-on-one, once again, click on that Calendly link right below there, or you can also scan the QR code on your screen right now, and we can set up a 15 to 30 minute video conference one-on-one to discuss anything that you want to cover. Hey, thanks once again for checking out my latest video. We'll see you next week.